Avoidant partners find themselves caught in a devastating psychological paradox where they simultaneously crave the very intimacy they compulsively push away. This internal conflict creates a prison of their own construction, where the walls that protect them from vulnerability also isolate them from the love and connection they desperately need. Your departure becomes the key that can potentially unlock this prison and force them to confront the fundamental contradictions in their approach to love and relationships. The avoidance defensive system operates like an overprotective security apparatus that has become more dangerous than the threats it was designed to guard against. Originally developed to shield them from childhood wounds of abandonment, rejection, or emotional overwhelm, these defenses now prevent them from experiencing the healing that genuine love and acceptance could provide. They've become so skilled at avoiding emotional pain that they've also blocked their capacity for emotional joy. This psychological imprisonment manifests as chronic dissatisfaction with relationships that never feel quite right. When partners pursue them, they feel suffocated and trapped. When partners give them space, they feel abandoned and unimportant. When partners love them consistently, they question the authenticity of that love. When partners withdraw their love, they feel validated in their belief that love is temporary and unreliable. No external circumstance can satisfy their internal conflict because the problem isn't situational, it's structural. The prison walls are constructed from deeply ingrained beliefs about love, safety, and their own worthiness of consistent care. They believe that needing someone makes them weak, that vulnerability leads to inevitable pain, that independence equals safety, and that love always comes with conditions that will eventually prove impossible to meet. These beliefs create a worldview where genuine intimacy feels more threatening than loneliness. Your continued presence in their life, no matter how patient and understanding, inadvertently reinforces these prison walls by providing just enough connection to prevent them from experiencing the full consequences of their defensive strategies. As long as you remain available, despite their emotional unavailability, they can maintain the illusion that their approach to relationships is working without having to confront its fundamental dysfunction. The avoidant needs to experience the natural consequences of their defensive patterns, the isolation, emptiness, and regret that inevitably follow when you push away everyone who tries to love you. Only when they feel the full weight of these consequences can they begin to question whether their protective strategies are actually serving them or slowly destroying their chances for meaningful connection and happiness. Your departure forces them to sit alone with their choices and their patterns without the comfort of your continued availability serving as a safety net. This solitary confrontation with their own emotional architecture is often the first time they truly examine whether their defenses are protecting something valuable or imprisoning something essential to their well-being and growth. Your patience enables their avoidance instead of healing it. The compassionate patience you show toward an avoidant partner, while well-intentioned and loving, often becomes the very force that prevents them from developing healthier relationship skills and confronting their attachment wounds. Your understanding and accommodation of their emotional limitations inadvertently teaches them that their defensive strategies are sustainable and that they can maintain intimate connections without reciprocal emotional investment or vulnerability. Every time you excuse their withdrawal, rationalize their mixed signals, or patiently wait for their emotional availability, you're providing them with evidence that their current approach to relationships is adequate. They learn that they can receive love, support, and companionship without having to stretch beyond their comfort zone or challenge their defensive patterns. This creates a dynamic where growth becomes optional rather than necessary for maintaining meaningful relationships. Your patience also protects them from experiencing the natural feedback that would normally motivate behavioral change. In healthy relationship dynamics, emotional unavailability leads to partner dissatisfaction, relationship conflict, and potential loss of connection. These natural consequences serve as important information that encourages people to examine their patterns and develop better emotional skills. When you absorb these natural consequences through your patience and understanding, you eliminate the feedback loop that could motivate their growth. They never have to experience the full impact of their emotional unavailability because you're constantly adjusting your expectations and needs to accommodate their limitations. This accommodation, while loving, prevents them from recognizing how their patterns affect others. The enabling quality of patience becomes particularly problematic when it's paired with hope for their eventual change. Your continued investment in the relationship, despite minimal reciprocal effort, teaches them that they can maintain your attachment without providing the consistency and emotional availability that healthy relationships require. They learn to manage your needs through minimal effort rather than genuine transformation. Your patience also allows them to avoid the vulnerable work of examining their attachment wounds and developing healthier coping strategies. As long as someone is willing to love them despite their emotional limitations, they have no pressing need to confront the fears and beliefs that drive their defensive behavior. The comfort of your continued presence reduces their motivation for the difficult internal work that healing requires. The paradox is that the patience intended to create safety for their healing actually prevents that healing by removing the necessity for it. They need to experience some discomfort and consequence from their patterns to develop motivation for change. Your unlimited patience eliminates this discomfort, and in doing so, eliminates their primary motivation for growth. They can't appreciate what they take for granted. Human psychology operates according to principles of scarcity and value that make it nearly impossible to fully appreciate something that's consistently available without effort or investment. Your constant availability and unconditional love, while precious and rare, becomes invisible to the avoidant partner precisely because it requires no effort from them to maintain and comes without risk of loss. The avoidant has learned to navigate relationships from a position of emotional safety, where they control the level of intimacy and investment. Your willingness to love them, regardless of their reciprocal effort, means they never have to stretch beyond their comfort zone or risk genuine emotional investment to maintain your connection. This safety, while comfortable, prevents them from experiencing the vulnerability that deepens appreciation and attachment. When something valuable comes without cost or effort, the human mind tends to devalue it as common rather than precious. Your love, patience, and support become background elements in their life rather than extraordinary gifts worthy of protection and reciprocation. They begin to view your care as baseline expectation rather than remarkable blessing, which diminishes their motivation to reciprocate or protect what you're offering. The psychological phenomenon of hedonic adaptation means that the avoidant becomes accustomed to your love and support as their normal baseline rather than recognizing it as exceptional treatment. Just as people adapt to positive changes in their circumstances and return to previous levels of happiness avoidance, adapt to your consistent care until it no longer registers as special or noteworthy. This adaptation process is particularly pronounced for avoidants because their defensive strategies are designed to minimize the perceived importance of external relationships and emotional dependencies. They unconsciously diminish the value of your love as a way of protecting themselves from the vulnerability that would come with fully acknowledging how much your care means to them. The lack of scarcity around your attention and affection also eliminates the natural urgency that typically motivates people to invest effort in maintaining valuable relationships. When something is always available, there's no pressing need to work for it or prioritize it over other interests and activities. Your consistent availability removes the natural pressure that would otherwise motivate them to become a better partner. Your departure creates the scarcity necessary for accurate valuation of what they've been receiving. Only when your love and support are no longer freely available can they begin to understand what they were taking for granted. The absence of something precious often provides the first clear view of its true value, making loss a necessary teacher for those who can't appreciate abundance. Loss is their only teacher for genuine appreciation. The avoidance psychological makeup requires the sharp contrast of loss to understand the value of what they possessed but couldn't fully appreciate while it was freely available. Their defensive strategies are so effective at minimizing emotional impact that only the undeniable reality of permanent absence can penetrate their protective barriers and force honest evaluation of what they've given up through their emotional unavailability. During relationships, avoidants focus primarily on the costs and constraints of partnership. The emotional labor required, the vulnerability demanded, the autonomy potentially threatened. Their attention naturally gravitates toward what feels difficult or overwhelming rather than what feels supportive or nourishing. This selective focus prevents them from developing accurate understanding of the relationship's true value to their well-being and happiness. Loss forces a recalibration of this selective attention by removing the sources of anxiety and overwhelm while preserving the memory of comfort, support, and understanding. When you're no longer physically present, making emotional requests or triggering their intimacy fears, they can finally focus on what your presence provided rather than what it demanded. This shift in focus often reveals benefits they were too defended to recognize during the relationship. The finality of loss also eliminates their ability to take your return for granted, which has been a crucial factor in their inability to appreciate your presence. During the relationship, they unconsciously relied on the assumption that you would always be available, regardless of their behavior. This assumed permanence allowed them to deprioritize relationship investment in favor of other activities and interests. When loss becomes real, rather than theoretical, it forces them to confront what life actually looks like without your presence, support, and love. They can no longer rely on the comfort of knowing you're there while maintaining emotional distance. They must experience the full reality of the isolation their defensive strategies create, which often provides shocking clarity about what they've been rejecting. The learning that comes through loss is particularly profound because it's experiential rather than intellectual. They can't rationalize away or minimize the emptiness, loneliness, and regret that follow your departure. These emotions provide direct, undeniable feedback about the consequences of their choices and patterns in ways that words or arguments never could. This type of learning through natural consequences is often the only way avoidance can develop genuine motivation for change. Intellectual understanding of their patterns isn't sufficient to overcome defenses that operate at an emotional and physiological level. Only the lived experience of loss can create enough discomfort to motivate the difficult work of examining and changing deeply ingrained attachment patterns. Your departure forces them to confront their deepest fears. The counterintuitive truth about avoidant psychology is that their greatest fear isn't abandonment in the traditional sense. It's the recognition of how much they actually need and depend on the people they push away. Your departure forces them to confront this terrifying dependency by removing the person who has become essential to their emotional regulation and daily well-being, despite their conscious belief in their own independence and self-sufficiency. Throughout the relationship, the avoidant maintained the comfortable illusion that they could take or leave your presence, that your love was nice but not necessary, that they were choosing to be with you rather than needing to be with you. This illusion of choice and independence protected them from acknowledging the depth of their attachment and the vulnerability that comes with genuinely needing another person. Your departure shatters this illusion by demonstrating how much of their emotional stability and daily satisfaction was actually dependent on your presence, even when they couldn't consciously acknowledge it. They discover that you weren't just a pleasant addition to their life, but a fundamental part of their emotional ecosystem whose absence creates significant disruption to their well-being and sense of self. The fear of dependency runs so deep in avoidance because it represents everything their defensive system was designed to prevent. Needing someone means being vulnerable to their choices, moods, and availability. It means accepting that their happiness and security are partially outside their control. It means risking the devastating pain they experienced when early attachment figures disappointed, abandoned, or emotionally neglected them. Confronting this fear through the reality of your absence often triggers an identity crisis, where the avoidant must reconsider fundamental beliefs about themselves and relationships. They can no longer maintain the fiction that they're naturally independent and self-sufficient when your absence creates such obvious disruption to their emotional equilibrium and life satisfaction. This confrontation with dependency fears often reveals the profound loneliness that their defensive strategies have been masking. They realize that their independence hasn't protected them from needing others. It's only protected them from acknowledging and healthily managing those needs. The result has been chronic emotional starvation disguised as strength and autonomy. The fear confrontation that occurs through your departure can be the catalyst for genuine healing if they're able to sit with the discomfort long enough to examine what it reveals about their authentic needs and desires. Rather than immediately seeking replacement or distraction, They must learn to tolerate the anxiety of recognizing their own human need for love, support, and emotional connection. They need to experience the consequences of their emotional unavailability. Avoidants have typically spent their entire adult lives being shielded from the natural consequences of their emotional unavailability through the patience and accommodation of partners who adjust their expectations rather than enforcing healthy boundaries. Your departure may be the first time they experience the full impact of what their defensive strategies actually cost them in terms of love, support, and meaningful connection. During most relationships, the consequences of avoidant behavior are absorbed by their partners rather than experienced by the avoidants themselves. When they withdraw emotionally, their partners work harder to reconnect. When they send mixed signals, their partners invest more energy in decoding their intentions. When they withhold affection, their partners lower their expectations rather than demanding better treatment. This dynamic means avoidants rarely experience the natural feedback that would help them understand how their behavior affects others or motivate them to develop better relationship skills. They operate in a consequence-free environment where their emotional limitations are accommodated rather than challenged, enabling their patterns rather than encouraging growth. Your departure forces them to experience consequences they've been protected from. The isolation that follows pushing people away. The regret that comes with taking love for granted. The emptiness that results from emotional unavailability. And the recognition of what's lost when someone finally stops accepting poor treatment. These consequences provide crucial information about the sustainability and effectiveness of their relationship approach. For the first time, they must confront whether their strategies for self-protection are actually serving their long-term happiness and well-being or slowly destroying their chances for meaningful connection and love. The experience of consequences also demonstrates that their actions have impact beyond their immediate comfort or discomfort. They begin to understand that their emotional unavailability doesn't just affect their own experience of relationships, but profoundly impacts the people who try to love them. This recognition can develop empathy and motivation for change that wasn't possible while consequences were being absorbed by others. Learning through natural consequences is particularly important for avoidants because their defensive system is specifically designed to minimize the impact of emotional information. Logical arguments about the importance of emotional availability can be easily dismissed or intellectualized away, but the lived experience of loss and isolation provides feedback that penetrates their defenses and demands attention. Your leaving is an act of love for both of you. The decision to leave an avoidant partner, while painful and counterintuitive, represents one of the most profound acts of love you can offer both yourself and them. By refusing to enable their dysfunction and instead enforcing healthy boundaries around how you deserve to be treated, you create the conditions necessary for both individual healing and potential relationship transformation. For yourself, leaving represents the ultimate act of self-love and self-respect. You're choosing to prioritize your emotional well-being and relationship needs over the comfort of familiar dysfunction. You're refusing to sacrifice your growth, happiness, and standards to accommodate someone else's emotional limitations. You're modeling what healthy boundaries look like and demonstrating that love doesn't require accepting poor treatment. Your departure also protects you from the gradual erosion of self-worth that comes from accepting less than you deserve in relationships. Staying with someone who can't meet your needs for consistency, emotional availability, and mutual investment slowly teaches you that your needs don't matter, that you should be grateful for whatever affection you receive, and that love requires sacrifice of your authentic self. The psychological damage of remaining in relationships where your emotional needs are consistently unmet extends far beyond the immediate relationship. It teaches you to normalize dysfunction, to question your own perceptions of what healthy love should look like, and to develop coping strategies that may harm your capacity for future healthy relationships. Leaving protects your emotional development and preserves your ability to recognize and receive genuine love when it appears. For the avoidant, your leaving represents a wake-up call that their current approach to relationships isn't sustainable or satisfying. It forces them to confront the reality that their defensive strategies, while protecting them from vulnerability, are also preventing them from experiencing the love, support, and connection they actually want and need. Your departure demonstrates that healthy people have standards and boundaries that must be respected, that patience has limits, and that love, without reciprocity, eventually exhausts itself. These are crucial lessons that can only be learned through experience rather than explanation. Your leaving provides the experiential education they need about how relationships actually work. The shock of losing someone who genuinely loved them often penetrates the avoidance defensive barriers in ways that conversation and explanation never could. They can intellectualize away discussions about their emotional unavailability, but they can't rationalize away the empty space left by your absence or the regret that follows recognizing what they've lost through their own choices. Your departure also eliminates their ability to maintain the comfortable illusion that their relationship approach is working. As long as you remained, despite their emotional limitations, they could tell themselves that their way of loving was adequate, that their needs for independence and control were being respected, that they could have connection without vulnerability. Your leaving forces them to confront that this approach ultimately drives away the very people they most want to keep. The love inherent in leaving also includes faith in their capacity for growth and change. By refusing to accept their current limitations as permanent, you're expressing belief that they're capable of developing healthier relationship skills and overcoming their defensive patterns. Your departure says, "I love you too much to enable your dysfunction," rather than "I'm giving up on you permanently." This act of loving detachment creates space for both of you to grow individually in ways that might not be possible while managing the dynamics of a relationship where one person is emotionally available and the other isn't. Sometimes love requires stepping back to allow the natural consequences and learning experiences that can motivate genuine transformation. The space created by your departure allows the avoidant to miss you authentically rather than taking your presence for granted while feeling burdened by your emotional needs. This authentic missing is often the first genuine emotion they've allowed themselves to feel about the relationship without the interference of their defensive reactions to intimacy and emotional demands. Your leaving also honors the possibility that you might build something healthier together in the future if they do the work necessary to address their attachment issues. By refusing to accept less than you deserve now, you preserve the possibility of something better later while protecting yourself from further emotional damage in the present. The timing of your departure is crucial for maximizing its potential for positive impact. Leaving during moments of crisis or high emotion may be interpreted as abandonment rather than boundary setting. The most powerful departures are those that occur calmly and clearly, with explanation of what you need and why the current dynamic isn't sustainable, followed by consistent enforcement of your boundaries. The ultimate expression of love in leaving is the recognition that both people deserve relationships characterized by mutual emotional availability, consistent care, and genuine partnership. Your departure creates the possibility for both of you to eventually experience this kind of love, whether together after significant growth or separately with more compatible partners who can meet your respective needs. The transformation that occurs through necessary loss. When an avoidant partner experiences the loss of someone who genuinely loved them, it often catalyzes a profound transformation that wouldn't have been possible while the relationship continued in its dysfunctional state. This transformation isn't guaranteed, but the conditions created by loss provide the optimal environment for genuine self-reflection and growth that can lead to healthier relationship patterns. The initial shock of loss forces the avoidant to confront the inadequacy of their defensive strategies in ways they've been able to avoid while you remained available. They can no longer maintain the comfortable fiction that their emotional unavailability is sophisticated, or that their need for independence is more important than their need for connection. The reality of living without your love and support provides undeniable feedback about what their choices have actually cost them. This confrontation often leads to a period of intense self-examination where the avoidant must honestly assess their relationship patterns, their fears about intimacy, and the childhood wounds that shaped their defensive strategies. Without the distraction of managing your needs and reactions, they have the mental and emotional space necessary for deep introspection and potential healing. The loneliness and isolation that follow your departure can serve as powerful motivators for change if the avoidant allows themselves to feel these emotions, rather than immediately seeking distraction or replacement. This discomfort provides the internal pressure necessary to motivate the difficult work of examining and potentially changing deeply ingrained patterns that have governed their approach to love and relationships. Many avoidants who undergo this transformation report that losing someone they truly cared about was the catalyst for seeking therapy, reading about attachment styles, or engaging in other forms of personal development work. The pain of loss often provides the motivation for growth that the comfort of the relationship couldn't inspire. The transformation process typically involves several stages: initial denial and rationalization of your departure, gradual recognition of their role in relationship problems, authentic mourning for what they've lost, examination of their attachment patterns and childhood wounds, development of new relationship skills and emotional awareness, and eventually, the capacity for healthier, intimate connections. This transformation is particularly profound because it's motivated by genuine recognition of consequences rather than external pressure or demands. The avoidant chooses to change because they've experienced firsthand what their defensive patterns cost them, not because someone is trying to convince them to be different. This internally motivated change tends to be more sustainable and authentic than change driven by external expectations. The skills developed through this transformation often include greater emotional awareness and vocabulary, improved communication abilities, increased tolerance for vulnerability and intimacy, better understanding of their own needs and boundaries, and enhanced empathy for how their behavior affects others. These skills serve them not only in potential reunion with you, but in all future relationships. However, it's important to recognize that not all avoidants undergo this transformation, and the timing varies greatly among those who do. Some may change relatively quickly after experiencing loss, while others may need years to process the experience and develop new patterns. Some may never change at all, choosing instead to maintain their defensive strategies despite the loneliness and isolation they create. The possibility of transformation should never be the primary motivation for leaving an avoidant partner. Your departure should be motivated by your own needs and well-being rather than hope for their change. However, understanding that your leaving creates optimal conditions for their potential growth can provide comfort and meaning during the difficult process of ending a relationship with someone you love, but who cannot love you consistently in return.